They say genius is born, not made. Perhaps that is true. But I would tell you that genius must suffer to become real. It must be shaped by hardship, honed by passion, and carved, like marble, through pain. I am Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, sculptor, painter, architect, and poet. Some called me divine. Others, cursed. But in truth, I was a man possessed by visions, by duty, by the very hand of God. Come. Let me show you my world. My name is Michelangelo, and this is my life, as I lived it. Born under the Tuscan sky. I was born on March 6, 1475, in Caprese, a small village nestled in the Tuscan hills. My family was of noble lineage but had fallen into modest means. My father, Lodovico, worked as a civil servant in Florence, a city teeming with culture, intellect, and divine ambition. My mother, Francesca, died when I was but 6 years old. Her loss, my first agony, left a hollow in me that would never truly heal. After her death, I was sent to live with a stonecutter's family in Settignano. There, among the marble dust and chisels, I first felt the heartbeat of the stone. I would later say, if there is anything good in me, it comes from the air of that place and the chisel of those hands. The fire awakens. At 13, I defied my father's wishes and became an apprentice to Domenico Ghirlandaio, a respected painter in Florence. There, I learned fresco techniques, perspective, and the anatomy of the human soul as it could be captured with color and light. But painting, though noble, was not my first love. My heart, even then, belonged to sculpture. Within a year, I was invited to study at the Medici Gardens, under the patronage of Lorenzo de' Medici, Illinois Magnifico. I was just a boy, yet I stood among philosophers, poets, and artists, absorbing the spirit of the Renaissance like a thirsty sponge. It was there I carved the Battle of the Centaurs, a chaotic and powerful marble relief. Lorenzo saw the fire in me, and for a time, I flourished under his wing. But fate, as always, would change the course. Death of a patron, birth of an artist. When Lorenzo died in 1492, the Medici influence waned, and Florence plunged into political chaos. I fled to Bologna, then later to Rome, where destiny awaited. There, I carved the Bacchus, a pagan god of wine and excess, depicted not in glory, but in vulnerability, teetering on the edge of madness. Rome was scandalized and intrigued. But it was my next work that would seal my name in eternity. In 1498, I was commissioned by the French Cardinal Jean de Billarys to create a sculpture for his tomb. I chose to depict Mary cradling the dead Christ, a moment of unbearable sorrow and divine stillness. The result was the Pietà. I was 24. When they unveiled it in St. Peter's Basilica, the people did not believe such a masterpiece could be the work of a mortal. I overheard whispers, surely it was made by another. Enraged, I carved my name across Mary's sash in a single night. It is the only work I ever signed. The Giant of Florence. In 1501, I returned to Florence. The city needed a symbol of strength, of virtue, of divine defiance. They gave me a discarded block of marble, rough, brittle, and deemed useless by others. For 2 years, I worked in secrecy. I saw in that marble a young man, not a boy, but a warrior of spirit. David. Not triumphant, but tense. His brow furrowed. His sling ready. The moment before the battle. When unveiled in 1504, the David stood over 17 feet tall and became the soul of Florence itself. The agony and the ceiling. In 1508, against my will, I was summoned to Rome by Pope Julius II. He demanded I paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. I protested, I was a sculptor, not a painter. But the Pope would not relent. For 4 torturous years, I painted nearly 5,000 square feet of fresco. Lying on my back, my arms cramped, my vision blurred, paint dripping into my eyes. Yet with every stroke, the story of Genesis came alive. Adam's limp hand reaching for the spark of God. The creation. The fall. The flood. When it was unveiled in 1512, people wept. The ceiling was not just a painting, it was a cosmos, a theater of humanity and divinity. The tomb and the fury. But Julius was not done with me. He demanded his tomb, a monument like no other. For decades, I toiled on and off, plagued by interruptions and rivalries. Of the 40 figures I designed, only a few were completed. Among them was Moses, seated with horns of light, his muscles taut, his beard like flowing marble. I struck his knee with my hammer and screamed, "Speak!" For such was the intensity of my need to bring stone to life. The Last Judgment. In 1534, Pope Clement VII and later Paul III called me once again to the Sistine Chapel. This time, I would paint the Last Judgment, a vision of the Second Coming, the damned tumbling into hell, the saved rising in ecstasy. I stripped the figures naked, raw, human. Critics called it obscene. They called me mad. But I knew what I had seen in my dreams, souls twisted in fear, others lifted in divine rapture. And there, in the lower corner, I painted myself. My own face in the flayed skin of St. Bartholomew, a man laid bare by his art. Architect of the heavens. Late in life, I turned to architecture. I became the chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, reshaping its very soul. I redesigned its dome, a crown for the Church of Christendom. I worked until I was nearly 90, driven not by pride, but by duty to God. I also continued sculpting. My last Pietà, the Rondinini Pietà, was never finished. Christ and Mary, twisted and elongated, fragile. My hands trembled with age, and still I carved, as if each blow would bring salvation, death and immortality. I died on February 18, 1564, in Rome. My body was returned to Florence, my beloved city. But I am not buried in stone. I live in the dome of St. Peter's, in the muscles of David, in the eyes of Mary. I live in every artist who ever picked up a brush and dared to challenge the divine. My legacy. I was not easy to know. I was impatient, reclusive, obsessive. I fought popes and patrons. I loved men in silence. I feared the judgment of God. But above all, I lived to create. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. That is my story. I carved it into history, not with ink, but with chisel and fire. And that's another chapter from the pages of history, proof that the past is filled with legends, leaders, and visionaries who shaped the world we live in today. But history is far from over. There are still so many incredible stories to uncover. So if you enjoyed this journey through time, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to History's Icons for more legendary tales. Who or what should we explore next? Let me know in the comments, your idea might be the next great story we bring to life. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next episode of History's Icons, where the past comes to life.